Hello and welcome to Revising for Exams in English Literature. This is part 2 of presentations aimed particularly at my third-year students. This presentation focuses on the question of what do you actually do once you've done all your preparation and you find yourself in the exam hall and they say to you, now you may turn over your exam paper. Well, here's the thing, you need to have a system. So I'm going to outline my system for you. It may work for you, may not. You could always try a mock exam where you do your preparation, set aside an hour, write a sample question, judge the result for yourself, see does this system work. As Hamlet says to Yorick, what do I do in the exam hall? And Yorick replies, remember, tempus fugit. That is, time flies. We have to monitor our time in the exam hall. So, simple steps to exam success. Take 60 seconds to get over the panic of looking at the question. When you turn your essay or your exam paper over, I'll guarantee you the question will look strange. It's not strange. All the themes are connected. It might be phrased differently, but that just means you have to think on your feet and make the link to the themes that you know. Okay? This student isn't doing that. She's just going, it's so unfair. This question doesn't match my pre-prepared answer exactly. Now what do I do? As opposed to this student who says, I get it. Panic over. Now I can see how this question relates in some interesting ways to the themes we examined in the module. Okay, so you take your 60 seconds and get over the panic, right? Now we underline 2 or 3 key words in the question. So here's a sample question on Morrison. Morrison's novels take their formal inspiration from the modernists and their historical inspiration from the lives of African Americans. Discuss. So have a think. Look at that question and see, can you underline 2 or 3 words, 4 at the most. The minute you get into 4, I think we're pushing it a bit. But just see what you can do to underline the key things you want to prioritize in your revising. You can pause this presentation and then advance it when you're ready to check to see, did our answers match up? Well, look, I underlined 4. That's cheating. I underlined formal, modernist, historical, and African Americans. Maybe you did the same. I'll tell you why I did 4, because I'm really thinking of them as 2. Form and modernism, that's one issue. History and African Americans, that's another issue. So I'm really viewing this as subject number 1, subject number 2. Okay? You might have done it differently. Have a think about it. So once we do that, then we can go on to the next step. And that is to do a spider diagram, where we start putting our key ideas down on a spare sheet of paper at the back of our script. And you can cross it out later and just say, listen, this isn't to be marked. These were just my notes. But I think about how form and modernism are linked. And I think about the history of these novels is really very specifically to do with African American history. Now, what can I start to add to those topics in doing a bit of a brain dump here? Well, I can remember, oh yeah, that the historical demands of these novels really determine, in Morrison's mind, all the magical things that happen. You know, the fact that Beloved returns or Pecola gets blue eyes or whatever. She says, listen, that ain't magic, right? All of these things, whether people are imagining them or they're losing their minds or these things really do seem to be happening, she says this is all a function of a brutal and disorienting historical experience. And historical necessity is a key idea for Morrison. And then I can think about, well, the form of the novel, what do I know about that? Well, both Beloved and particularly Beloved, but even Bluest Eye, play all kinds of games with form, fragmenting stories, breaking things up so they're hard to understand. Well, I can make a link across to the history of African Americans and say, yeah, their lives were quite fragmented, coming through the system of slavery. So there are connections between the form and the history. You know, we talk about African Americans who lacked documentary identity, textual evidence, birth certificates. You know, we read a bit of Frederick Douglass's slave narrative where he said, I don't even know what my birthday was. I wasn't sure who my mother was. You know, it would be wrong for Morrison to write a novel that was neat and tidy and explained everything. Okay? So, what do we do next? We get all our main points out there. Okay? And we can now number them. This is the key thing about doing a spider diagram. When we dumped the ideas on the page, it didn't matter what order they came in. But you don't want to write an essay that way. That's just chaos. So we do the brain dump first, then we order them. And I say here, I think I'll start by talking about form and modernism. And then here, oh, by the way, I'm going to make clear that Morrison is not a modernist, right? Huxley is not a modernist. Steingart is not a modernist. Forster is not a modernist. I know somebody's going to get this wrong in the exam. There are differing levels of influence that the modernists had upon them, but they're not modernists. Okay, so I'm going to do form first, then I'm going to talk about African American history, then I will talk about the whole magical element of Morrison and how it's not magic, it's historical necessity. So now I've structured my essay, and that allows me to write a brilliant introduction, something that the student next to me can't do because they just plunged in and they're just writing a chaotic essay. So here we go. Here's an introduction that says, in Beloved and the Bluest Eye, Toni Morrison clearly displays the links in her mind between the formal fragmentation of the modernist writers, you know, the ones she wrote her master's dissertation on, like Woolf and Faulkner, and the fragmentation of identity experienced by African Americans subjected to the horrors of slavery. How could any black person whose family survived slavery feel that they had any confidence in their own identity when, quote, anybody white could take your whole self for anything that came to mind? That's a quote from Beloved. Hence, when Beloved returns, or Pecola believes she has blue eyes, they are less magical moments than crushing historical necessities. And there, I've hit all my key points. I've got a quote from the text. Nailed it. Okay. I can follow the same pattern in the conclusion just to make sure I include my key points. In conclusion, we can see numerous moments in both novels when the plot elements, both magical and horrific occurrences, are presented as things which history has inflicted upon these characters. The difficulties the reader sometimes has in even figuring out what's happened is a product of Morrison's sense that a fragmented narrative is also a historical necessity. To present African American history as a nice, tidy, clear-cut tale would be to misrepresent the realities her novels are trying to capture. Wow, it's all tied together. Can you see it? We've come full circle. We said what we were going to argue. We argued it point by point. We concluded by reviewing our main points. Bravo, a well-organized essay. Now, what about the timing of this whole undertaking? Because you only have 1 hour per question. Are you someone who often runs out of time in exams? Are you sometimes tempted at the end to start writing in bullet points? Because you shouldn't do that. Do you sometimes spend an hour and a half on one question that you really prepared well for and you feel comfortable with, and then scrimp on the other 1 or 2 questions? You're only going to have two questions in total in your exam. Well, don't. If you're that person, we need a system to make sure that doesn't happen, because you won't benefit points-wise if you dump all your time into one question and scrimp on the other. So there is a solution. Watch carefully. We actually write out our timing the minute we get done numbering our spider diagram. So look at this. If my exam starts at 8:30, I take 5 minutes to do the spider diagram. That brings me to 9:35. I then write out from 9:35 to 9:45, I'm going to talk about moments of formal confusion in both Beloved and the Bluest Eye. And I'm just making a note to remind myself about the whole Dick and Jane issue at the start of Bluest Eye. Great. Then I note from 9:45 to 9:55, I'm going to write about links to identity, the fragmentary experience of blacks. I'm going to include the ambiguities about who Beloved even is herself. How can we know who she is? That's 10 minutes. Then I'm going to do 10 minutes up to 5 past 10 on the assaults on identity in both novels. Like, you get the whole Shirley Temple thing in Bluest Eye where poor Pecola can't see anything that she can identify herself with, or school teachers' assaults on people in Beloved, where this idea that I'm going to reduce them to kind of like scientific samples and specimens. I'm going to rationally, take their identity from them that way. That's 10 minutes. Then another 10 minutes up to quarter past, I'll deal with the magical elements that are not at all magical, but are actually historical necessities. Then, look at this, from 10:15 to 10:25, 10 whole minutes for rereading my answer, reviewing it, rewriting parts of it, adding things to it if I need to, and then 5 minutes of proofreading at the end. So it may seem like a long time, 10 minutes to allow at the end, well 15 in total really, just for revision. But I'm trying to make the point, this is where you really smooth out your answer, you fix mistakes, and you add in things that you missed the first time around. So we check over our exam for spelling, grammar, handwriting is important. Please make it legible. Leaving words out, picking the precise word, checking that, and remembering key things in the argument that you might have forgotten the first time you wrote. And what do you do if you forgot something? It's fine. Put in a little asterisk and say, please see paragraph on page 6. And on another page in the script, you can write that paragraph and add it in. That's fine, no problem at all. In fact, it tells me that you revised your essay. Whereas the person next to you who's just writing chaotically, yeah, they're not going to have any structure or realize they left anything out. So there's no bother putting in an asterisk and saying, please see the paragraph on page 6 or whatever page it is. Now, you finish the exam. Which student do you want to be coming out at the end? Do you want to be student A, who's going, hooray? Or do you want to be student B coming out going, oh, that was awful? Well, did you say A? Thing is, she may be happy because she says, I really didn't read that much, to be honest with you, nor do I know that much about Morrison. So I'm kind of unaware of how much more I could have said in that exam. She may not be happy for the right reasons. Or did you say student B, who said, you know what, I'm really unhappy because I read so much and I know so much about Morrison that I am aware of how much more I could have said in that exam. Okay, so how you feel at the end of the exam can be a little misleading. You may find that this is how the grades pan out in the end. The happy person may have thought she got an A, but it may not work out that way. And so this person's actually saying, you know what, I am pleasantly surprised with my grade. And this student's going, I thought I'd done better. In any case, if you are struggling to prepare a topic or to organize your notes, you can drop me an email to discuss. I strongly encourage you to work together, support each other, but I will do what I can to help. There is my email address. And exams are so much fun now that I know how to revise effectively. Okay, guys, thanks for listening. I hope that was of some help, and best of luck to you in your exam.